Hi, it's me, and welcome everyone to the first new ID overview for Limbus Company's Season 6. It appears that the Heishou packs are here to stay for some time, as this first new banner introduced two new triple-out IDs in Heishou Pack Sud Branch Rodion and Heishou Pack Sud Branch Gregor. Both of these IDs feature a combination of Rupture and Poise in their kits, and while they do maintain Poise better than they do Rupture, they both seem to function pretty well in both teams. So with that being said, let's go into their status effects and passives, since there's some stuff to note with them. Let's begin with status effects. Both IDs have a new buff for themselves in Serpent Arm, which is a very powerful Poise effect. It lasts for 3 turns and gives 3 Poise with 2 Poise count every turn, which is already a lot. And it also gives 5 Poise every time they use a base skill against a target that has any amount of Rupture. This means that their Poise is easier to maintain in a proper Rupture setup, so that they can gain Poise as often as possible. Their second effect is a new debuff in Deathrite Venom, which features Deathrite as a keyword despite being able to inflict multiple types at once anyways. It's always inflicted at 5 stacks and can't be inflicted if an enemy already has it, and deals gluttony damage based on enemy Rupture when it hits 0. Unlike Deathrite Haste, however, this effect decreases when the enemy is critically hit while they have Rupture, and applies 1 offense level down and defense level down each time it triggers, up to 3 times per turn. Unlike being at 10 plus speed, being able to crit is something that a lot more Rupture IDs can take advantage of, which is probably why this Deathrite has 5 stacks instead of just 3. And now their passives. These are just not really worth talking about. Rodion just gains a small raw damage boost if she has Serpent Arm or the target has Deathrite Venom, and Gregor deals additional raw damage to enemies that have Deathrite Venom based on his current Serpent Arm. It also gives him Pierce damage up if he drops enemy Deathrite Venom to 0, despite him only having a single Pierce skill in his entire skill rotation. Now that preliminary stuff is taken care of, let's look at their kits. In my opinion, Heishou Pack Sud Branch Rodion is the clear better of the two IDs. That holds true even as a support, as she grants the ability to inflict defense level down and offense level down once per turn when your fastest ally triggers Rupture damage. While not game-changing for Rupture, it's a pretty nice effect to have, though you will want her in the team more than likely. Reversal Kick is a 3-13 rolling Gluttony Clashable Guard that becomes a 3-14 at 10 plus Poise count. Clashable Guards are really nice as they can increase enemy stagger threshold on winning a clash, but the real reason to use this skill is to gain Serpent Arm in order to help her gain Poise. You'll want this effect to be active as often as possible, so it's nice to be able to trigger it whenever you need with this skill. Serpent Glint is a 3-11 rolling /envy skill with 2 coins that can become a 3-15 based on her own Poise and the target's Rupture. It inflicts a small amount of Rupture and gains a sustainable amount of Poise count, so the skill is pretty useful for a skill 1. The Rupture infliction also doubles if the second coin lands a crit while she has Serpent Arm. It isn't too noteworthy of a skill, but it is pretty decent overall. Snake Fang is a 4-16 rolling /gluttony skill with 3 coins that can become up to a 4-22 based on her own Poise and the target's Rupture. It's her main inflictor of Rupture count, becoming Rupture neutral on a clash win, and also her only skill that inflicts Deathrite Venom. On top of that, the last coin can reuse once if she's over 30 Poise, and grants an additional 1 Serpent Arm per crit with that coin. Even though it doesn't provide any Poise, it actually works out to be Poise neutral regardless of how many crits it lands, as long as it wins a clash. That said, if the coin is reused, this skill does become Rupture count negative, and while it is great for damage, I know a lot of people probably won't be fond of that fact, especially since this is her best skill for Rupture count infliction. Serpent's Mortal Flurry is a 5-17 rolling Pierce Gloom unfocused volley with 3 coins and 3 attack weight, but can become as strong as an 8-26 in a clash or a 5-23 for damage, based on her own Poise and Serpent Arm and the target's Rupture. While this skill does become a bit less reliable when there are a lot of targets, it also inflicts 1 Rupture count to all of its targets on a clash win, and any unfocused volley does become a single target skill if there's only 1 enemy left. The last coin is particularly nasty. Getting a crit with it will forcibly reduce enemy Deathrite Venom to get closer to triggering that burst of gluttony damage, and also allows the coin to be reused up to 2 times. Even if you are hitting 3 separate targets, this skill is really consistent and deals pretty heavy damage. It also just gives 3 Serpent Arm if you use it. It should be noted, however, that it won't inflict any offense or defense level down from reducing the death rate, since that effect of the status has to be triggered by its own effect. This ID is terrible at fueling Rodion's ego, not that she really needs it to be strong. That being said, it's worth noting that Effervescent Corrosion is a Gluttony ego, and that is very helpful for triggering Gluttony Resonance to help with the various Rupture-based effects that the team really likes. Primarily, this is for Talisman. That said, you probably don't need any of her ego to use this ID effectively. Moving on now to Heishou Pack Branch Gregor, who may be worse than Rodion, but is still pretty strong and serves a much more focused purpose in the team. His defense skill is exactly the same as Rodion's, even down to the name, so I don't have anything to add for that. His support passive, however, is very interesting. It gives Poise to the next substituting unit, but only after Gregor himself has been defeated in combat. While it is interesting, it isn't really necessary for a Poise team to have, though I hope that in the future stuff like this may become more powerful for other teams. There's just far too much Poise support to need it, unfortunately. Snake Fang is a 3-11 rolling slash pride skill with 2 coins that can become up to a 3-15 with enough combined Poise on himself and Rupture on the target. This skill is also very similar to Rodion's, however it inflicts Rupture count on crit instead of additional Rupture potency, which is pretty nice. It being a pride skill, and him having a pride skill in general, also makes him the more optimal choice between the two for using in a dedicated Poise team. And since he provides other affinities that team really needs, it's not a terrible choice to bring him. Blindsiding Cleave is a 4-16 rolling slash gluttony skill with 3 coins, that can become up to a 4-22 with enough combined Poise on himself and Rupture on the target. This skill is also almost identical to Rodion's, though it inflicts more Rupture potency in exchange for 1 less count. It still has the reuse with high enough Poise and additional Serpent Arm on crit, but unlike Rodion, this isn't Gregor's only way to inflict Deathrite Venom. The skill 3 is where the 2 IDs differ wildly from each other. Serpent Shear Puncturing Arm is an 8-22 rolling Pierce Envy skill with a single coin, but becomes up to an 8-28 based on his own Serpent Arm and Poise and the target's Rupture. It could potentially deal 300% additional damage thanks to conditionals and crits, and is Rupture count positive on a crit while also inflicting Deathrite Venom. The coolest application of this skill is that it will guaranteed reduce Deathrite Venom to 0 if it crits, forcefully triggering the Gluttony damage burst before inflicting it back immediately afterwards. This skill has the potential to deal insanely high damage, and I appreciate that Project Moon has finally figured out how to make good single coin skills when it comes to overall damage. Unlike Rodion, Gregor actually does have Rupture Ego. AEDD is theoretically one of the best Rupture Ego for the team, allowing you to inflict 1 Rupture count on hitting an enemy with a Gloom skill. Gloom is pretty common on Rupture IDs as a skill 3, but there are a handful of strong Rupture IDs that have it as their skill 2 as well. It also provides charge support, and there are a good charge and Rupture ID to funnel the additional charge count into. Lantern and Leisure Domain are also Gluttony Ego that can be used for Gluttony Resonance effects, and both are very cheap to fuel. Lantern also provides passive HP gain when Gregor kills an enemy that has Rupture. It's technically a Rupture Ego, but only inflicts it on its corrosion, so it's mostly useful for being Gluttony and for its healing properties. These IDs function the best in Rupture-focused teams, and as such, you want to have as many units you can to trigger crits in order to trigger Deathrite Venom. There are several very good IDs that can do this. The most prominent one is Cinq-Morceaux for being incredibly consistent as a Rupture ID, while also having very good Poise gain. He's also incredibly fast and functions very well alongside the Heishou Mao IDs for Otis and Ryoshu. You can inflict both Deathrites at once, so bringing those 2 as well can result in adding Gluttony damage to your Rupture a lot more often. The other unit that is best paired with these IDs is actually 7 Faust. She has great Rupture count application and helps to fuel AEDD really well. She also can crit not only through her passive, but also by bringing along her own Thoracalgia, which gives Poise to allies every turn. It can enable much more consistent reduction of Deathrite Venom, and she should not be missed as a result. Having Red Sheet Sinclair on the bench or in the active party can also be pretty good, both for his talisman to be able to trigger a lot more Rupture, and because him having a Pride skill means you can trigger Ryoshou's Thoracalgia effects more often for even more Poise gain. Any other great Rupture ID also pairs well with these IDs. W. Corp Yusang, Lantern Don Quixote, 7 Heathcliff, Devyat Sinclair, and 7 Otis are all great to use in any Rupture team if you don't have the other units that pair better with these IDs. And lastly, they can both be very solid additions to Poise teams as well. They have amazing Poise generation, and while Rodion doesn't have a Pride skill, her what is cast Ego is very easy to fuel and can be used whenever you want to trigger Pride Resonance with. Any of the best Poise units pair well with them, like Blade Lineage Yusang, Blade Lineage Faust, Blade Lineage Don Quixote, Blade Lineage Marceau, Full Stop Hong Lu, Full Stop Heathcliff, and Sanct Sinclair. And that's all I have to say about these new IDs. I really love their aesthetic. Snakes are one of my favorite animals, and purple is a great color for them. I want to briefly apologize for any laggy looking footage or audio for the intro portion of the video. I got a new PC and lost all my settings for OBS, so I was figuring it out as I was recording for this video. In any case, feel free to add me if you want to try out these new IDs for yourself. I'm personally a big fan of them, which I don't often feel about Rupture IDs. I'd appreciate if you liked or subscribed as it helps me out a lot, and am interested in hearing how everybody feels about these IDs, so comment about that down below. Thank you for watching my video, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you again soon.